Okay, so a lot of questions on this project one. So I figured let's go ahead and go through a sample, get you started. One of the biggest questions is where do I begin? So I have here a sample tester file, and we're going to go ahead and use that JavaScript txt file. So from this script, this file, we want to generate all of these classes. In fact, in this case, there's only one class called car. And then we have two interfaces. We also, within the car class, we also have three properties. So let's begin. First thing I want to do is go to the tester. Well, before we even start that, let's go ahead and create the classes that will hold this information. Okay, so under my project, I want to create something that's going to hold classes. So we're going to call it Java classes or Java class. Okay. We also want something to hold properties. So Java property. And we want something that's going to store interfaces. So Java interface. Doesn't really matter what you name them, but you have to name them something. In each and every case, we are going to have one constructor that is going to be sent a file that is already open. We're going to read in data from that file to populate each of these classes. So in terms of the Java interface, scanner, control spacebar, fin. We're going to be doing this on each and every one of these. So Java property will have the same thing. And the Java class will have that same scanner. In our text file, we'll notice that for a class, and this is all we're going to really work with right now, you'll be having to do the Java property and the Java interface. Under the Java class, we want to read in all the information that belongs to a class file. So if you look at this Java text file, we have these first few things here: name, abstract. Name is car. Is the class abstract? No. Does it extend? What does it extend? It extends a rectangle. It implements iMovable, iDrawable. Does it have a clone method? Yes. Does it have an empty? No. Does it have a workhorse? No. And does it have a copy constructor? No. In our case, actually, we probably want to have a workhorse. We want to probably have a copy. And that's it. All right, so what I'm going to do is just copy these down. I'm going to copy those and move over to the Java class. And I'm going to paste them there temporarily. These are just temporary. And I'm going to read in the data in this order. So up here for my Java class, let's create public. Doesn't matter if it's public or private today. So public string, we need a name. That will take care of this first one. We need something for extends and implements. So name extends from implements interfaces. Okay, and then the rest of these are Boolean. So public Boolean, and we need is it abstract? So abstract class. I would use the word abstract, but of course that's a keyword. Reserved word for Java. Abstract class. The next one is clone method. Next is empty. Constructor. Workhorse. Actually, let's get this on a start a new line. Public Boolean. Workhorse. Constructor. And copy. Constructor. All right. So this takes care of the properties that I need to read in. Now, one of the things that I gave you here for your project, I put it into the Word document, is this utilities class. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste that into my project. And the utilities is there in order to read in information from the text file. When you know you're going to read in something that has a Boolean value at the end, you use this one. If it's a string value, like the name of the class or what it extends or what it implements, then you would use this one. You don't have to go to this and you don't have to modify this. I'll show you how to use it. So when we're reading in our files, we know that our text file is going to start off with name and then abstract, extends, implements, clone, and it has all of this information. So all you need to do is say that the name, our variable up here, is equal to utilities, control space bar. Come on. It's going to take a while. Well, that's not any fun right there. Okay, utilities dot next line of data. Okay, I better save just in case we crash here. Okay, so that gives you the name. So in our case here, it'll bring in the word car and assign it to name. Abstract is next, so abstract method or abstract class is equal to utilities dot next Boolean, the next line Boolean. Okay, and this is not even what I wanted here. So utilities dot next line Boolean. I don't know where the text came from. Next will be extends. So extends from utilities dot next data line or line data. Implements, interfaces. Again, next line data. And then the rest are Boolean. So it's really this line I'll put right here. So it's going to, it'll be the clone, the empty, so clone, method, control V, empty constructor, control V, workhorse constructor, and copy constructor. All right, so this reads in all of the properties that we need. This is your exact code. Okay. Now, when the file reads that, it reads the name abstract all the way down to copy constructor. After that, it can read one or zero to many properties. So your code has to continue reading until the line that it reads says end class. Okay. So let's move on from there. So what we're gonna have is a while loop. And there's many ways we can do it, but we'll say while true. So endless loop. String s is equal to reading the line of data So fn dot next line, and we could right now just go ahead and remove all of the tabs. So replace looking for tab and replacing it with nothing. The reason I'm doing that is because under the JavaScript file that we have, when I read property, okay, it doesn't have any tabs afterwards, but it does have this tab right here. So I'm looking for the word property. This is what I'm looking for. I'm also looking for end class. So we could do that. If s dot equals, ignoring the case, just in case, end class, and we want to break out of this loop. So let's take a look at that. So it's reading down to here. Then it begins to read. Is it a property? If it's a property, we're going to have to do something else. But once it finds that it's read the end class, it stops reading. It's done reading. So we go back to our code. Once we've done and finished reading our file, class file, we break out of this loop. If, or you can do else if s dot equals, ignoring the case, property, then we've found a place where we have to read in a property. So all I need to do here is I need to say that in my class, I want to keep a list of properties. I want to keep a list of these. So it would be 1, 2, and 3. So there's 3 properties I need to keep. So if I'm going to keep a number of objects, I need to have one more thing here. I need to have public array list of a Java property equal to a new all right. Java property. All right. Okay, so we have something here, and we have this error. Why is that error there? Public array list. We have to, of course, name it. Properties. Yeah. Not good. So we have this list of properties that we're going to keep. So when I read the word property, colon, all I need to do is say properties, that array list, dot add a new Java property. And as you remember, our one and only constructor for our Java property is one that takes a scanner. And then it has to read in the data that it needs to know how to read in. Close this, and I put F in. And just like that, you're done reading in your file. And so this right here would read in your file. What it doesn't do, of course, is it doesn't fill in the property stuff. You're going to have to take over from there. So how does this all work? Well, after it's all said and done, you can create a little method here. We're going to call it a public void save or generate or whatever you want to call it. So on the save, what we're going to do is we're going to simply create a print writer. So print writer, control space bar, PW is equal to null. Okay. We're going to do a try, catch, and a finally. All right. So we want to check if PW is not equal to null. Then go ahead and PW.close. If we have an error, sysout e.getMessage. So we have a message. And what do we do for the try? The try, the first thing we want to do is open up a file. So PW, or create a file, is equal to a new print writer. New file, control spacebar. And we're going to call this something.java. We're going to call it whatever the name from up here is. Whatever you read in from our text file. And that happened to be, in our example, it happened to be car. So our Java class is creating a file called car.java, which is exactly what we wanted. From here on, it is all based on the data that you've retrieved from here. Okay, so let's move on. Let's do the simplest version. pw.print line, if you want. I know I did printf in my example in class, but let's just do print line. And then you could change it however you like. In our case, we're going to have public class. And again, we don't know, we haven't inserted the word abstract or not. But this is the simplest version. Public class name. Okay. And then the last thing, pw.println and curly bracket. So, just with this, we can demonstrate how this whole process works. If I go back to tester now, you'll see we have nothing in here. What I do want to have, though, is I want to have an array list, private static array list of Java class. We'll call that classes. Array list of a Java class. We have a private static array list of Java interface, call it interfaces. Java interface. Okay. All right. We don't need this, but we do need a main. All right. So how do we make this whole thing work? It's pretty simple. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing we did in the other file. We're going to create a reader now. So scanner, control spacebar, fn is equal to null. Try, catch, exception E, sysout, e.getMessage, and finally, if fn is not equal to null, fn.close. Okay, so same setup. Fn is equal to a new scanner, new file, and the file is going to be this guy down here, javascript.txt. In our case, we just want to loop until we're done. So while fn dot has next line, so as long as it has another line to read, we can move through. So the first thing we want to do is find out if what we're reading is a class, in our case, a class, or an interface. What I don't have in this list is an enumeration. So you could add that. So if it's an interface, I want to add a new interface. And if it's a class, I want to add a new class. So tester, if, in fact, let's just do this, string s is equal to fn dot next line. So let's get that line. And we say if s dot equals, ignoring the case, class, then we know we found a class. And all we need to do here is add to our classes. Classes dot add a new Java class, and we send over fn. We send over the opened file. And that's really it. If we could do an else if s dot equals, ignoring the case, however I wrote it, interface, then I can say interfaces dot add a new Java interface with fn. Literally, that is your code for the main. In the end, you only have to do one last thing, and that is to actually create your file, like create everything. So at the end of this try catch, all I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through all my classes. So for Java class, we'll call it JC in classes, jc.save. We'll do this, and you do the same loop for interfaces. But now interfaces, we haven't created the code, so it can't do anything. So let's run this and see what happens. So I'll run it once. Notice I do not have car here. I'll even refresh. Do not have car. I'll run the code and push F5 on my keyboard. Run the code once. Does its thing. Push F5, and that's what it just created right there. We open it up. And that's not what I wanted. I want to make sure that we're only running this code right here, this tester. Let's run it one more time. F5. If this comes out with a lot of data, it only means that I'm running probably this tester right here. So we have to clear that out. Okay, there you go. Public class car. So that was what was created when I told it to print. So let's see what happens. How do you modify this? Well, I'll show you how to do that, and then you're on your own. The class, if I wanted to plug the word abstract in here or not, I would have to do something like this. Plus. This is where those inline ifs come in handy. So if abstract class, that's from up here, that was read in. If it's abstract, if it's an abstract class, and in this case, it is not. But if it were, then I would want to add in the word abstract. Otherwise, since it's not abstract, I'm going to add in nothing. So let's run this again. Oh, look at car, and it looks just like so. However, let's take this JavaScript file and make this a true for abstract. Save it, and run it again. And now we'll look at car again. You see public abstract class car, and that's coming from right here. Lastly, we would need to put on right here. We need to put on extends and the implements. So how would we do that? Well, we do it this way. So if extends from dot length is greater than 0, that means I know that extends from had something to it. So we want to write the words extends and then we want to add on what it extends from. Plus extends from. Otherwise, nothing. So this is getting a little bit crunched up in here, but let's go ahead and move these back a couple tabs. Okay, so this right here is my if statement for the extends. And so I need the same thing for the implement. So let's just run this. Let's save this. Let's run it and see how class changes, this car class. So I run it again. Go away, come back. And now I have extends rectangle. And that's because in the JavaScript file, the extends rectangle. Implements will be the same way. Implements iMovable and iDrawable. So let's add that right here. Copy, paste. So if the word implements from or implements interfaces. Yep, I push Control Spacebar, it's just taking its time. Oh, there we go. If implements interfaces length is greater than 0, then we want to say the word implements. And that. Otherwise, nothing. Okay. So save it. Notice that it's going to say iMovable and iDrawable. Right now it does not. I run it again. I go away. I come back. And there it is. Public abstract class car extends rectangle implements iMovable and iDrawable. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a file for exporting. So I'm creating this file. If I asked you to write a program that prints out, 20 names, you certainly could do it. Ask the person for 20 different names and print it out to a text file. You could do that. This is the same thing. We're doing the same thing here, except in the end, I'm going to have something I can work with. So the next thing you'll have to do is, as you recall, in a text file, you'll have like all of your properties, public or private, probably private string make, private string model, and private int year, right? That's part of what we need to do next. So our properties will tell us how we're supposed to print those out. We'll have a name, a type, so private string make. Does it have a getter? Does it have a setter? What is the scope of the setter? Oh, it's public, of course, but the scope of the getter, the scope of the setter is private. So we use this information to then generate the other stuff that we need. Okay? So this scope right here would be for this top part. So when you're doing this, your Java property should have two save methods. One to save the property header, which would generate like this stuff. And the other one would be save getters and setters, which would then be the getters and setters for these. Okay. So there you go. That's the beginning of your program. If we ran just this stuff right here, that would give you a tremendous start to your project code.